Warm and fuzzy now. Sorry for the delay. We had a little bit of technological issues here. My name is Donna Maria Blancero. I'm Associate Dean of Undergraduate Business, and I'm one of many who's absolutely delighted to welcome you here to Bentley. I know that you've been welcomed so many times, but for us, it's sort of like we've been planning a party for a while, and now all our friends finally showed up. One of the great things about Bentley, I think, is that you'll find that the faculty are genuinely excited to meet you, and we get sort of all happy this time of the year. I know that sometimes in other places, faculty sort of dread the beginning of the semester. We're kind of excited about it, and I hope that you feel that excitement and that you really get to know us and enjoy your first year. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the GB core that you'll be taking. Don't feel the need to have to remember all this, but I wanted to give you sort of a sense as to the integrated program of courses that you'll be taking throughout your time at Bentley. It's called GB for General Business, and so every student takes a series of 9 courses throughout their 4 years that really get you a great foundation in business. And one of the really cool things is, I don't know of any other school, and not that I've done extensive research on this, but I don't know of any other school that has a combined finance and accounting class that is given in freshman year. So you are really part of a very elite group that has the opportunity early in your career to study this combination of accounting and finance, and just the fact that you're studying accounting and finance your very first year, your very first semester, is really quite different. It really gives you an edge, I believe, over other students throughout the country. I'm actually a management professor, and I teach cultural diversity, so my material could not be more different in many ways than accounting, but that doesn't mean that I appreciate it any less. You'll also be taking other courses that, in the GB, again, the General Business Core, you'll be taking other courses that are combinations of different areas. So for example, in your sophomore year, you'll be taking a course that combines marketing and operations. And in your junior year, you'll be taking a course that includes faculty from finance, marketing, and management. And then again, many other courses. I certainly have to give a plug for the course that I used to teach a lot, which is GB 215, which you take in your sophomore year, organizational behavior. I'm sure you'll love that course. And if you don't, come and speak to me, and I'll make sure that faculty member never teaches it again. No, that's just a joke. That was really my only job, is to come up here and say hello to you and welcome you. And now I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Professor Kiana Pierre-Louis, and she teaches in law, taxation, and financial planning. So have a great day. Thank you.
Good morning. I want you guys to stretch. We just started and I'm looking at your faces. Stretch it out for a second. Thank you. Stretch, wiggle, because I have you for an hour. Perfect. As Donna said, I am Kiana Pierre-Louis, and I am a lecturer for GB 110, which is the Legal and Ethical Environment of Business. Some of you have me in class already. I am also the GB 110 coordinator, and I'm just up here for a quick second. I'll be back. You'll have me for the full hour, but I'm up here for a quick second just to tell you what the legal and ethical environment of business is about, because at some point all of you are taking it, whether you're taking it in the fall or you're taking it in the spring. It is a great course. For those who have me, you're going to have a great time. But any of the professors who teach GB 110, they're awesome and you're going to have a good time. But if you have questions regarding just GB 110, you can always come find me and talk to me about what's going on. So the course provides basically an introduction and an overview of the legal and ethical environment of business, which today we'll get a little bit into. So ethics will emphasize on legality, government, and ethics. Ethics will be woven through the entire semester. There is a chapter on ethics, but it's also going to be woven in every time we talk about any legal topic. Other legal topics we'll talk about, which some of you may have known, are constitutional law, business crimes, which I always find for some reason is a popular topic, torts, including product liability. That's when, let's say you have a blender and it blows up in your face and you're wondering who you should sue. contracts, employment law, intellectual property, business orgs, and so on and so on. And one familiar one we're going to talk about in the legal and ethical environment of business is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Has anybody heard of that? Okay, not many. But we're going to talk about that a little today too. But all that and corporate social professional responsibility we'll get into. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little glimpse of what you'll see in this class, and I hope you enjoy your semester. Now I'm going to turn it over to Joy Gray, who is the GB 112 coordinator, and she's going to introduce that class.
Good morning. I am very happy to welcome you, and I'm probably about the 100th person who's welcomed you, but welcome to Bentley. We are delighted to have you here. The GB 112 course is going to be your introduction to finance and accounting. We have 10 accounting faculty and 3 finance faculty involved in that course. About 105 of you will be in one of my sections. I teach 3 sections of that course, so I'm looking forward to meeting all of you on Monday. We have selected this format in order to help you understand better how the topics of accounting and finance integrate together. We also try to make sure that you understand how they integrate across all business professions, not just if you're going to be an accounting major or a finance major, but you're also going to find that if you're going to be in marketing, if you're going to be in management, if you're going to be in operations, if you're going to be in information systems, that you need that basic understanding of accounting and finance. We selected the format today of this presentation because over the last 10 years or so, there have been a lot of major financial statement type frauds that have occurred, particularly in the United States, but worldwide. And that has impacted somewhat the confidence that people have in business, and we're trying to turn that around. We're looking to you to help turn that around, so we want to make sure that you have a good background in the information. It is now with great pleasure. We received from the Ernst & Young Foundation very generous support for our course development efforts. This is, as Donna Maria said, a very unique course for a college level, particularly for freshman level. Ernst & Young Foundation, we received a very generous grant from them in order to do the course development efforts. And at this time, I'd like to ask you all to give a very warm welcome to Mark Rocca. He is an EY partner in assurances service from the Boston office. Mark?
Thank you, everyone. For me, this is really exciting. For you, you're starting on a new journey. You are at such a great school, and I can share with you, I work with teams at all of my clients. I have tons of alumni from Bentley, and they are some of the finest and the best folks I work with. So for you, you should be thrilled. You've earned this opportunity, and I hope you have a great 4 years. You'll see us, frankly, on campus a lot. We focus a lot of time here. We think this school is one of our focus schools. It's a target school for us because it has some of the best and frankly, the brightest students out there. We are thrilled to sponsor the course. It's an end-to-end accounting and finance course. You'll see our name on textbooks. You'll see our name on various materials. So you know a little bit about who we are. We are a very global firm. We have over 250,000 people globally. We cover finance, accounting, tax, advisory services, IT services. Frankly, anything that you might be interested in, we have it. For me personally, I have spent 14 years at this firm. It's the only job I've had ever since I finished college. This firm has offered me tremendous growth. It's let me take risks. It's helped me grow. We have such a culture of coaching, consultation, growth, mentorship, inclusiveness, those things on a daily basis over the course of 14 years, starting as fresh out of school as a first-year staff all the way up through partner. That has not changed one bit. You know, we hope you enjoy the classes. We hope you learn a lot from it. I think some of the comments that they shared about how important you are to the future, to the future of finance and business, it's really not an understatement. Once you finish college and you work in whichever field you work in, you are the ones on the ground. You're serving clients. You're working with clients. You're making financial statements. You're making decisions. That really influences things on a global scale. So whichever path you take, you are frankly in a great place to really do great things. So we hope that you see our brand. We hope that you spend time with us. You'll see folks on campus constantly throughout your 4 years. We hope you ask questions. We hope you introduce yourselves. You'll certainly see us try to track you down. So we're thrilled to have you as part of our group, as part of our sponsorship. And we hope to spend more time with you on campus. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So is everyone still with us? Everybody still awake? Okay, we're going to ask you to participate in poll number 1, which teams KPL and Team Joy, you guys can now text a one-word description of your feelings about starting classes on Monday.
You received my code, it was KPL, or Kiana Pierre Louis, or KPL Louis, and then the code, and then put it up there. Enjoy.
Okay, so let's see.
Oh, there it is. Relieved, that's a good one.
Oh, wow.
They got some crazy ones.
Mark is excited now. You're getting about the same results.
All right.
So it looks like our results are showing up very similar between both teams. We have a lot of nervous, excited, and anxious folks out there. We do have some people who are, I did see one that was overjoyed. I really liked that. Let me tell you, that was great to see. So we are looking forward to seeing you in classes starting Monday. Okay, before you can learn in the present, one of the things that you have to do is learn a little bit about the past. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on the past, but I'll tell you a brief little story about accounting and finance. In 1969, there was a French archaeologist who went into a museum and found these interesting artifacts and pieced together a history of accounting. These artifacts dated back to 7000 BC, and they showed that there was this system used of tracking things like produce and exchanges using clay tokens. The tokens, those came before people ever started actually writing things. They evolved into the use of clay tablets that were used for tracking economic activity and quantifying those outcomes, such as planting and harvesting of crops. A little bit after that system, so largely about 7,500 years after that first system that was discovered, there was this commercial explosion going on in a place in northern Italy, approximately 1400 AD. This explosion of business meant that we needed a lot more ability to track what was going on in business, and so the first accounting system was developed. I have a little video clip here. I think a lot of you are going to recognize where this place is, so let's see how many of you recognize where this clip comes from as soon as it comes up on my screen. There we go.
In the meantime, here in Europe, monks toil endlessly recording books by hand. But that is about to change.
Okay, who knows where that clip's filmed? Okay, I like you guys. Can you tell us, can you yell it out? That's an Epcot, precisely where? Spaceship Earth. Okay, great job. So, that's how record keeping, that's how accounting used to be done. Accounting system was actually developed by a good friend of Leonardo da Vinci's, a Franciscan monk named Luca Pacioli. He wrote a 27-page accounting textbook. If you're really into that, we have a copy of it in the library that has been translated from the original Italian on double entry bookkeeping. And he set up one of the first principles of accounting, which you'll be learning about in GB 112, the principles, but the fact that it needed to have a common language. So we all needed to be speaking the same language when we started talking about numbers. In his case, he said we needed to be using Arabic 1, 2, 3 numbers rather than the Roman numerals. So that became the foundation of our system accounting that we have today, and it's allowed accounting and also business to flourish over the next 617 years. That same system is still the basis. It's changed, but it's still the basis of accounting worldwide today. But instead of extremely manual activities, we now use computers. And now Professor Pierre-Louis is going to tell you some about forms of business.
So real quickly, the integration between 110 and 112 is somewhat similar, but in 112, you're going to get a glimpse on what a corporation is and what corporations do when they're talking about accounting and finance and institution. In 110, because that is the legal environment, you're going to talk about all the other business organizations, so sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs. Does anybody know what an LLC is? Okay, good. Limited liability companies. And then there are newer ones. So those are the bases that we've had for a while, but there are newer ones. Benefit corporations, you've heard of those? So they're nonprofit corporations, but now they're doing it for a profit. So there's benefit corporations and things like that. So you're gonna learn, there's an integration between all of them. So you'll learn, if you're taking just 112 right now, you'll only get a glimpse of corporations, but you'll learn about everything else, all the other organizations that I just talked about in 110, and go really deep into corporations.
Now we're going to fast forward a little bit in our journey through history, so I'm going to bring you forward quite a bit. And what we're going to look at is more recent history, the stock market crash 1.0, as I like to call it. So no, not 2008, but we're going to talk about the stock market crash of 1929.
Even at the height of the speculative frenzy, only a small percentage of the American public actually invested in stocks. But the market had entered popular culture. Wall Street became Main Street. Everyone was talking stocks. Watching the ticker became a national sport. Popular magazines covered financial news. Dozens of bestsellers promised investors the inside track.
What a feeling, you got me feeling bigger and better than ever.
In brokers' offices across the country, the small investors, the tailors, the grocers, the secretaries, stared at the moving ticker in numbed silence. Hope of an easy retirement, the new home, their children's education, everything was gone.
Literally billions of dollars were lost in that single day during the stock market crash of 1929. Nearly half of the banks in the United States failed as a result of that crash, and we had a 30% unemployment rate. That led to a crisis of confidence in the U.S. financial system, and as a result, that led to a couple things that you're now going to hear about.
So you'll learn that there's going to be a theme. Anytime there's something catastrophic that happens, especially with business and our economy, what do you think happens after that? Go ahead, yell it. What else? But what gets enacted? Go ahead. Legislations or laws get enacted. So right after that, in 1933, there came an act, and it's called the Securities Act of 1933. And the purpose of that was to regulate the purchase and sale of all securities in the United States. So it had two major objectives: to help assure that investors receive accurate, complete, and valid information about publicly traded companies. And the second was to minimize the likelihood of fraud and deceit when a company offers its securities for the sale to the public. Now, securities are stocks and bonds and things like that, so it's the buying and selling of those things that 1933 Act. And just because I'm going to talk about the second act, I don't want you to get confused. So the 1933 Act was the Securities Act of 1933. Then, in 1934, the Security Exchange Act of 1934 came along. And that basically builds upon some mishaps that the 1933 didn't talk about. So what that act did, it deals with continuous disclosures, continually disclosing publicly traded securities. It contains the first anti-fraud provision, requires regular reporting to the SEC, which is the Security and Exchange Commission. It requires registered companies to report information about their operations, financial condition, and management practices on a periodic basis. Now, the weird thing about the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934, that act actually created the Securities and Exchange Commission. You would think that it was created in 1933. It was not. The 1934 Act is what actually created the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I'm going to be really brief about the Securities Exchange Commission because I can teach a whole class on that, but I will be really brief. That, at that moment, was the most significant federal agency, or is, the most significant federal agency dealing with the U.S. stock market. It protects investors, it maintains fair, orderly, and efficient markets, it facilitates capital formation, and it helps provide for well-controlled stock market and instill confidence in an investing public. Those are still acts on the books, but you'll notice, obviously, most of you were born in 2008 when the next big boom happened, but you'll notice that some more acts had to come onto the play because those two were just not sufficient.
We in the accounting profession are very grateful for the SEC Acts of 33 and 34 because we called them the Full Accounting Employment Act 1.0. They led to a very robust accounting profession. However, shortly after these were passed, there was a company called McKesson & Robbins. They were a drug and chemical company, and a massive financial statement fraud was discovered in those companies. That fraud in today's dollars would be worth about $285 million. So in the scheme of fraud, these were like small players. That led to the establishment of some financial auditing standards in order to try to reduce the amount of fraud. I'm now going to fast forward once again because we told you already that businesses transitioned from this paper or stone tablet record-keeping system to computerized record-keeping. And if you ever stop in my office, you'll see I have some of the earlier computerized record-keeping systems sitting on my desk or behind my desk. But as these systems became faster and larger over time, something else became faster and larger. And that was the ability or the opportunity to manipulate financial records. So let's take a look.
Welcome, gentlemen, to the Equity Funding Insurance Division. And right now I'd like to introduce you to the fastest rising young stars in the organization. First of all, our treasurer, Lloyd Edens. Lloyd, have a bow. And secondly, Art Lewis. Now, Art's going to, is going to explain to you in greater detail how we can back up you fellas out there in the field. Art is an expert in computer science.
It sends out the bills, it advises clients when payments are due, and it not only keeps a record of... Mr. Goldblum.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Louis. You're doing fine.
Thank you. Stanley Goldblum, the president of the Equity Funding Corporation of America.
Now, I've talked to Stanley about this problem, and Stanley tells me that his assessment of the insurance division's earnings is that we should achieve an income of around $10 million on the year. Now, you boys don't think that's unreasonable, do you?
No. No, Mr. Levin, I guess not.
Okay, we go for a figure of $10 million net income. And then we got to break that down. Gross figure before taxes, a figure for taxes, and a figure for constant expenses. You can do that, can't you?
Well, there's no problem for me because I can just take that bottom figure, $10 million, and work backwards from there.
Floyd?
I guess so, Mr. Levin.
So there's something bothering you?
Well, Mr. Levin, if it turns out we're not doing this amount of business, $10 million worth of business.
We're $2 million short. Some error. I guess I'll just have to tell the auditors that I was just way off target. I'll have to amend all those financials.
No way. Now look, equity funding is committed to an insurance income of $10 million. Now that's the figure that Stanley is incorporating in his announcement of company growth for the year. And that is the bottom number that the auditors have already. Now we can't change it. It's not reasonable.
Yeah, but Mr. Levin, the auditor's going to want to see the policies that back up the figures. We didn't sell that many policies.
Well, didn't Joe show you that computer printing out all those policies this afternoon? The computer just keeps on printing them out.
You mean that I should program the computer to fake policies? For the auditors? Mr. Levin, can I ask you something? Did you know that those figures that Lloyd and I got out were going to be audited?
Well, didn't you?
So the Equity Funding Corporation of America was an insurance and mutual fund company. They were the first company to fully exploit the new opportunities that opened up with computerized accounting. Their fraud scheme was about $2 billion, that's billion with a B, dollar fraud scheme. And what was notable about it is that it lasted from 1965 until 1973. There were 22 employees who were successfully prosecuted, 22 people in that company who were prosecuted successfully who were involved, another 50 who had knowledge of it. So this was a huge fraud in that almost everyone in the company knew what was going on, or at a certain level in the company. That company filed for bankruptcy. At that time, they were the largest bankruptcy ever. Today, they don't even make the top 10. Investors lost out once again, and they got their own movie. You just saw some clips from it called The $1 Billion Bubble. The frauds claimed more victims in the 1990s. However, financial statement fraud, some of the companies did survive. Waste Management, for example, survived a financial statement fraud at their company. However, in 2001, we had the Enron Corporation, which also got their own movie, The Smartest Guys in the Room. They were, at that time, the biggest corporate bankruptcy ever. Today, they're number 6. Shareholders in that company, Enron, lost $74 billion. The employees lost billions of dollars out of their pension funds. So many employees, especially those who were close to retirement, no longer had a pension. They lost money out of their 401ks as well, out of their own personal retirement savings. Enron did not keep their title as the largest ever bankruptcy for very long. Mere months later, a company called WorldCom came along, and they had an even larger bankruptcy, once again caused by financial statement fraud that was eventually caused, at least in part, by a financial statement fraud. In 2008, Lehman Brothers took over the title of the largest financial statement fraud, the largest bankruptcy. They were not necessarily involved in a financial statement fraud, but there were definitely some questionable activities involved there. As a result of all this, attention turned to the topic of corporate governance, or looking at how companies manage their environment, how they manage their ethical environment. Each one of these companies that I've mentioned had a toxic culture in that ethical lapses from the top trickled down to their employees, to where, you know, I mentioned in the case of equity funding, there were at least 72 people who knew what was going on. In addition, the people who we trusted with external oversight of these companies failed, because these financial statement frauds and wrongdoing were allowed to go on for a long time. And it wasn't just the auditors that failed. We had people who were stock traders, who were advising investors, who also failed in their role. We had overseers such as the SEC. There were many, many people here who did not detect what was going on. The other thing I want everyone in here to think about for a moment is it's really unlikely that any of the people involved in this woke up one morning and went, oh, I think I'm going to go out today and destroy billions of lives and take away everybody's life savings. I mean, think about it. You really think there are that many people who are that callous that they could do that? No, that's not likely. They fell victim to their own ethical blindness, to not realizing that they were in an ethical situation. That's something you're going to hear more about when you take your Bentley philosophy course. And we will see if this will work. I just want to show you one clip, if it will run from my computer. And if it doesn't, we'll skip the clip.
I'm looking at your portfolio right now. You gotta buy.
A new ad for discount broker Charles Schwab, playing off one of the year's top business scandals.
I think we should buy it.
It's a buy.
Buy it. Just buy.
It's a no-brainer. I'd sell. Did I say sell? No, I meant buy, yes!
There's never been...
The ad mocks Wall Street firms touting stocks not because they liked the companies, but because they were getting paid to hype them, despite misgivings documented in their emails.
This is only a sample of some of...
So as you see there, even commercials got in on the act, but the end result of this bad behavior that I've been telling you about is that there was a loss of trust in both business, financial institutions, and the oversight institutions that were designed to stop this thing from happening. So, can everybody guess what happens next?
Well, if you're seeing me, you know it's something legal. But I just want to say, if you saw me doing a little dance back here, I was fighting with a bee, so that's why I slowly walked over there, but that's why I was doing a dance. But so, as I kind of mentioned before I started talking about the SEC acts, when anything happens, laws come into fruition. So the first act I'm going to talk about, and I'll go slow because I noticed the last time when I brought it up, the acts, you guys started feverishly writing, so I'll try to go a little slow. So the first one is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, better known as FCPA. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and that was in 1977, and that was enacted after Watergate. And one of many things, but that prohibits all U.S. companies or their officers and agents from bribing foreign governments or political officials to assist in obtaining or retaining business. The FCPA also requires issuers to maintain accurate books and records and have a system of internal controls sufficient to provide reasonable assurances that transactions are executed and assets are accessed and accounted for in accordance with management. So in other words, it's an anti-bribery. U.S. companies, if you are a U.S. company, so you formed your business in the United States, it is illegal for you to bribe other or foreign officials, and that's high-ranking officials. Let me be clear about that. That is the higher-ranking officials, not lower-level officials. The problem with that, as some United States business officers state, are that most other countries are allowed to do this. So they think that it puts United States business people at a disadvantage. Whether that's true or not, you can delve into that in your class, but that's some of the gripes with that. Then comes the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which I mentioned a little earlier. That was in 2002, and that was after what Joy just talked about, Enron and WorldCom. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is, you can put SOX, S-O-X, that's what it's known for. It represents one of the most significant securities legislation acts since the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. It attempts to increase corporate accountability by imposing stricter disclosures, harsher penalties for violations that require fines, as well as imprisonment. So just note, this one, you will go to jail if you violate this act. Whereas not so much with the SEC acts, but this one, they do carry criminal penalties as well as civil penalties. The funny thing about SOX or SOX is that in 1985, the private sector organized a group called COSO, which you'll learn about in GB 112. You will not learn about COSO in 110, but COSO means Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. And the private sector created this group to sponsor the National Commission on Fraudulent Financial Reporting. And they, in 1992, created a guide that was voluntary, that basically has some of the same information that has in the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. But because it was voluntary, the companies did not do it until they were made to do it in 2002 when Sarbanes-Oxley Act was enacted. But this happened way before it was enacted in 1992. The third act that I want to talk about is Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. I'll say it again slowly. I know. Say that 3 times fast. Ready? Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. Got it? That was 2010. Somebody just said no. Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. That was enacted in 2010 after the crisis in 2008, the financial crisis in 2008. That focuses on consumer protection, trading restrictions, credit ratings, regulation of financial products, corporate governance, disclosure, transparency, and it required the SEC to create an office for whistleblowers. And you'll note with all these acts, somebody in the corporations knew what were going on, but they didn't want to say anything because they were afraid for their jobs. And there was no out for them. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act also created some whistleblower provisions, but also the Dodd-Frank Act did as well. I'll turn it back. Oh, well, actually, no. You get your phones back out. You have another poll. So I'll read it, and then it will pop up so you'll know when to click it. But basically, do you believe that these laws are sufficient to prevent the next Enron, the next WorldCom, the next Bernie Madoff? Do you think these laws that I just gave you are sufficient?
And I think it's A for yes and B for no in both polls. Oh, it helps if I activate mine.
So overwhelmingly, I believe both polls are no. So I'm going to take literally 2 seconds, and we're going to 2 minutes and pass around the mic. And if somebody's brave enough, just to tell me why do you think they're not sufficient? I have 3-inch heels on, and you guys want me to walk down here.
Hi. Get a mic
Should
there.
I introduce myself or just go right into it?
You can go right into it.
All right. My name is Zach. I'm from. I got two different answers. I'm sorry. So I said no because since people have been doing this since 1933, and restrictions have just gotten tighter and tighter, people are always going to find like loopholes, and there are always going to be people tasked with finding loopholes. So they're always going to find a way around it.
That's a good point. There's one more over here.
I'm Nate. Okay, I saw the movie The Big Short, and it said it would happen again, so.
That's a great movie, by the way.
This thing on. All right. Hi guys, I'm Denzel. So as to answer her question, I don't think these acts are safe because even at high levels of government, you have companies that will probably kind of persuade government officials and people who like enact legislation. So that means that they can find another loophole. Yeah.
All right, we're going to do one more poll.
Okay, do new laws ever have negative impacts on business? A for yes, B for no. Well, I'd say that's pretty definitive results so far.
All right, I'm going to pass the mic again. Anybody want to say one of the negative impacts they think they may have?
Talk? Oh, I can get up. Okay. Obviously these new laws will have negative impacts on businesses because new regulations mean businesses have to instate new employees in new offices and new positions to make sure that people are. I lost my train of thought. Make sure that people are like keeping the right records and following the new regulations and just learning the new regulations. Every time something new gets enacted, the current employees have to be retrained and taught what the new regulations are, what they need to do to keep up with the legislation.
I think that the whole point of like ever having a negative impact is definitely very true. The fact that a lot of companies are now going to have to rework the framework that they started their company with and perhaps evolve it to a point where they can now use it for what's new, and like other companies will now like come up and say, let's like take advantage of this while other companies are struggling to like adapt to this. We'll just like start it up, and we don't have to like retrain our employees and like switch their trains of thought. We can just have people with initial trains of thought, and it just kind of makes more competition, which can fuel the economy, but it can hurt a business.
They're making some good points. Go ahead.
Over here. Hi. So I agree with what the previous answer said, but I believe that these large corporations, they have a lot of income to kind of meet these regulations, but who it's really affecting is the smaller companies who don't have the ability to meet, regulations. Hiring a new person in each office for these big companies who are like global, it's not as huge an expense, but for like small mom and pop shops or like smaller corporations who don't have as much financial backing, it can be very difficult to compete with these huge corporations in that time.
I was also going to mention, since the previous two answers were talking about large corporations, when you focus on the smaller businesses, basically getting that knowledge from the get-go takes time, and doing things correctly kind of takes too long, as well as it's everyone in America basically has to follow these rules because they're American rules. Then compared to businesses offshore, they can get competitive advantages by our businesses getting restrictions. Hence, it could negatively impact our economy if it doesn't offset, if the benefits of enacting the rule don't offset the negatives in terms of business.
I actually clap for all of them. You guys are very smart.
Very good.
And by the way, for the young man who stood up and said he lost his train of thought, you'll know if you guys have me for GB 110, I always lose my train of thought, so don't feel any way. And the students always have to remind me where I am, so it happens.
Thank you very much. I think you guys covered all of our high points here. So we don't have to debrief that question because you did a great job covering them. So we have a brief clip that we're going to play off of my computer. Maybe. Here it goes. Oh.
Go get louder.
They
You
don't
guys have to listen to this one.
Can we run the video? Can we run the audio off of mine? This is the one we don't have over there.
Unethical. This was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. What we do is legal, therefore it is not unethical. If this was unethical, it would be illegal. That company mantra was the only thing fending off this latest bout of moral crisis. You see, I just sold this guy and his two financial gurus on investing $200 million in our mortgage fund. He will lose almost everything. My firm will make $26 million. And it's totally legal. Therefore, it is not unethical.
So one more poll. That's a good question. If it's legal, does it mean it's unethical? Or not, excuse me, it is ethical. If it's legal, does it mean it's ethical? I'm gonna let it keep going, but I'm gonna talk to the few that said 9, the 9% that said yes, no. The answer is no, and you'll learn this as GB 110, but legality is the baseline. That is the very baseline of every ethical question. Is it legal? If the answer is yes, then you move on. If the answer is no, you should stop and abruptly not do what you're about to do. But if the answer is yes, then the question is it ethical? And ethical questions depend on a variety of things, which we'll get into in GB 110 and some of your philosophy classes. But I just want to make it clear that legality is always the lowest level, the base level. Ethical are the higher questions. Just because it's legal, which in that clip, which was Waffle Street, has anybody heard of that movie, Waffle Street? That was that movie. In Waffle Street, it was legal, but it was unethical, and he lost his job. He became a scapegoat because they found out what the company was doing. He was making the company a profit. He became a scapegoat, and he lost his job, and he didn't know what to do, so he opened up a waffle franchise. And he ended up being very happy in his life, but that's what happened. So it was legal, but it was unethical, and he paid a price.
One of the things that doesn't necessarily go away when you graduate is the fact that you end up with something we call peer pressure. And that can follow you into the corporate world and can impact the ethical environment in the corporate world as well. So whoops, that is not the one I want. We're going to take one more look at our friends at Equity Funding and see what Art was doing.
We have a serious problem, Art. Market's down. No rumors. The share prices are down. That company has to generate some cash.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Oh, pecan pie. I'll take the pecan pie.
Pecan pie. I'll take the pecan.
I'll have some pecan pie.
Are those blueberries or are those just, pecan pie, I think I'll like.
So remember, Art's the guy who programmed the computer to make the phony insurance policies. So we saw right there how easy it is to succumb to the people around you who are more senior to you, perhaps you view as more successful. Sometimes it's really easy to know what's right and what's wrong. I don't think anybody would say that creating fake insurance policies, if we presented it as that, we want you to create fake insurance policies for people who don't exist. You'd say it's pretty clearly wrong, but a lot of times there are complicating factors that are brought in here, and there are very bright and successful people who end up participating in this, or they know what's going on and they say nothing. It tends to be bright, successful people who get brought into these situations, and we don't want that to happen.
So one clip that I found, or a few clips that I found very good, or the documentary was called The Founder. Has anybody heard of that? A few of you, good. The Founder is all about McDonald's Corporation and who actually founded the corporation and what really happened. And in the few clips you'll see, clearly something goes wrong. The Ray Kroc knew certain things that he was doing was wrong, but then there becomes a point where it gets a little muddled because he didn't mean to do it. We're gonna show you the clips really quick. I know it's getting over the time, but we started late, and Bobby Lynn did assure me that I'll get you out in time. But I'm gonna show you the few clips of The Founder, and then we'll see what he did to try to make amends, and we'll talk about it for a few seconds.
I'm just asking you to extend my line.
Until you build more equity in your home or pay down the loan, there's nothing I can do.
My business is booming.
Unfortunately, that's immaterial.
Well, I've got 13 locations in 9 states.
It's a home equity loan.
Then give me a business loan.
These 13 locations, you own them?
Me personally?
It's your business, correct? You own it.
I'm the head of franchising. I'm the one behind this growth.
Well, that's all well and good, but you need assets.
Have you been to a McDonald's? Because we've got 3 right here in the Chicagoland area. You should come by and take a look. No, I would love to give you a tour, give you a better sense of what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Mr. Kroc.
Can I help you?
No, but perhaps I can help you. Harry Sonneborn, nice to meet you.
No, thanks. We're very happy with our current supplier.
I'm not here to sell you ice cream.
What the hell do you want?
I caught a bit of your conversation back there. Sounds like you're having financial troubles.
Why don't you mind your own business?
I'm a great admirer of your establishment.
Thank you.
I eat lunch at your Waukegan location at least twice a week. Always a fantastic crowd.
Your point being?
Mr. Kroc, if you're not making money hand over fist, something's terribly wrong.
June, grab the ledger, would you? Come on in the office, Harry.
So, to summarize, you have a minuscule revenue stream, no cash reserves, and an albatross of a contract that requires you to go through a slow approval process to enact changes, if they're approved at all, which they never are. Am I missing anything?
That about sums it up.
Tell me about the land.
The land?
The land, the buildings, how that whole aspect of it works.
Oh, pretty simple, really. Franchisee finds a piece of land he likes, Gets a lease, usually 20 years, takes out a construction loan, throws up a building, and off he goes.
So the operator selects the site.
Yeah.
He picks the property.
Right.
You provide the training, the system, the operational know-how, and he is responsible for the rest.
Is there a problem?
A big one. You don't seem to realize what business you're in. You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business. You don't build an empire off a 1.4% cut of a 15-cent hamburger. You build it by owning the land upon which that burger is cooked. What you ought to be doing is buying up plots of land, then turning around and leasing said plots to franchisees, who, as a condition of their deal, should be permitted to lease from you and you alone. This will provide you with two things. One, a steady, upfront revenue stream. Money flows in before the first stake is in the ground. Two, greater capital for expansion, which in turn fuels further land acquisition, which in turn fuels further expansion, and so on, and so on. Land. That's where the money is. And more than that, control. Control over the franchisee. Fail to uphold quality standards, you cancel their lease. Control over Dick and Mac. End result, you'll have the banks and the franchisees in the palm of your hand.
If I were to do this, the brothers, they effectively would be...
Yes. So, what do you say, Ray?
There are a couple more clips. I'm not going to show them. I'm going to go to the last one in a second, but I'll just set up what happened. So he does go along with it, and he ends up running a multi-million-dollar company, and he renames it the McDonald's Corporation. Now, he has a contract with the two brothers who actually were the original owners of McDonald's, but they wanted to keep it a mom and pop organization. They didn't mind franchising it, but they wanted to keep it a certain way. So they ended up having some disagreements. But because he started basically buying the land and selling the land off to the franchisees, he made more money. So when the brothers call him and ask what is he doing, he admits that he's doing it and tells them, they explain, well, we have a contract. And he said, contracts are like hearts, they are meant to be broken. So he knew, which is the very baseline again. Is it legal? No, it wasn't legal, it was unethical. I mean, it was illegal and unethical, but he knew they could try to sue them, but it was a giant going against basically a mom and pop establishment. So he told them, you can sue me, but I'll bury you in court fees. An argument happened on the phone. One of the brothers kind of has a heart palpitation and falls, and this is what happens at the very end on how they try to make amends. So just the last clip.
Come in.
How you feeling? Geez, that must have been some spill like fell right through the phone. I hear about you. What's that right here? There's a card in there. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Here. Just be happy.
What's this?
What's it look like?
A blank check.
Then that's that's probably what it is.
What are you buying?
Okay. You get better. I'll get up on your feet in no time and we'll talk. All right? Dick?
So he ends up buying the corporation, McDonald's Corporation, as you see it today, from Dick and Mac, the two original brothers. He paid them $2.7 million. That's what they asked for, where they each got $1 million each after taxes. He also promised them that they can have a percentage in stock, but that wasn't written in the settlement, and they never got it. But the question was, you noticed in the first clip, how did this all happen? It happened because there was a contract, but Ray believed he wasn't making a lot of money. He leveraged his house because he believed in McDonald's, and he was about to lose his house. And after that, everything trickled into him actually owning it, him ousting the brothers, and things getting a little bit complicated. So when Joy said, it's not always black and white, it's not always easy to tell what is right and wrong, things like that can happen. So one more poll, and then we're letting you go. And I'm gonna set the scene for this. So you are a manager and you're in charge of, I'll just say, a self-driving car. You all know they're trying to really come out with a self-driving car, but this time it's a self-driving Uber, okay? Self-driving Uber-like company. And the car, so the car's driving itself, but it has a passenger. You're a lead programmer, has come basically to you for you to help them with the question. And the question is, what happens when a human driver cuts off this self-driving Uber? How do you program this self-driving car? What do you program this self-driving car to do? 1, continue forward, hitting the vehicle that cut it off. Remember, there's a passenger in this car. Swerve left, possibly going into incoming traffic. Swerve right, possibly into pedestrians. Or set a panic brake where it just brakes automatically and then the car behind you may hit that car, the self-driving Uber.
They're going to take their chances.
This is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty much taking their chances with the driver behind them.
All right, so you guys are hitting the panic brake, and that's actually very overwhelming. I don't have time to debrief why. Some of you didn't pick B and C, a few did, but most of you are picking D, hitting the panic brake and maybe getting hit. Maybe you think that is the less chances that somebody may get hurt. But in all these scenarios, somebody is probably getting hurt. And it's not always easy to say what you should do in these circumstances. So we just want you to think of that when you're in these classes, when you're dealing with accounting, finance, legality, fraud, anything. Think of these ethical issues because they're not always black and white. I'm glad you guys sat with us for an hour. I hope we made it enjoyable. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn this off. Hi.
What was the answer? A, B, C, or D?
There is no answer. That was the point. Hey, you did? There is no answer.
Yeah, but because he or she cut him off, so he was in jail.
Hit that person in front?
Yeah, exactly.
But what if they didn't mean it? What if they didn't see it? Yeah, see, not easy.
What if